the questions and so forth. If we stay calm and peaceful, don't get naughty, I don't have to get firm with you. Okay? I don't want to have to do that, but I will if I have to. My job is to protect this young man. And nobody gets to attack him because I can stand in front of him. So yes, we're going to jump right in. You ready? All right. First question. Just step right up to the mic, be close to it so it gets recorded well.
Great. Scott, there's been a lot of people have reached out to me because I've really been rooting for you so far, and there's a lot of questions going to how is he on the Second Amendment? And here tonight, what I've heard, I really like, but to help convince, it's going to be hard for me to sell your pitch on Second Amendment. Are you willing to talk more about it openly? So that
Absolutely. I think the first thing we did on Second Amendment, because I know that I'm going to be plagued by questions on Second Amendment, because there were several legislators that were uncomfortable with basically telling the parents that were coming down to the Capitol that we're going to ignore them. So we didn't ignore them. And there were two of us that said, okay, we'll allow our name to be put on a proposal. The other fellow didn't put a time limit on. I did. I told Matt Little, I said, you got 1 month. Make it into a good bill, bipartisan, or my name comes off. And I did exactly that. But that won't be enough, because sometimes I think as Republicans, we cannibalize our own. We have to be able to have these kinds of conversations. In 4 years in the Senate, we never had a vote on a gun bill. And yet people have said, you're soft on Second Amendment rights. I own a dozen guns. I've been a member of the NRA. I shoot the stock and barrel. So at some level, I can't spend all my time talking about the Second Amendment to appease someone who refuses to be appeased. What we did is on our website, Dr. Scott Jenson, DrScottJensen.com, we created an issues tab. And if you go to the issues tab and you look at Second Amendment, I did 3 videos. What I've said in the past, what I'm saying now, and what I want to do in the future. And those 3 videos, each one is probably about 2-3 minutes. And we're trying to be as transparent as possible. Was what I did in 2018 a brilliant move? No, it wasn't. It was a first-time senator extremely frustrated with being told that we can't talk about this. We just have to ignore all these folks coming down. And I said, no, I can't do that. So that's really about all I can say. But I know it's going to come up, and so will the single-payer bill. I mean, I voted one night for an amendment that people have said, well, you for single-payer. Well, knucklehead, no, I'm not. I'm a family doctor, and I know full well that if we turn everything over to medical assistance and Medicare, our healthcare system is going to implode. But what happened, and so it's so hard to get the context. I mean, you get just a sound bite. But it was like 11 o'clock at night, and Blue Cross Health Partners and Medica came to us, and they had told us that they were not going to be able to offer a plan for people in small business or individuals in 15 of these 87 counties. So in 72 counties, or whatever the number was, they were going to offer the regular standard plan for large employers and small employers and individuals. When I heard that, I said, you are going to offer a plan for every county because you make plenty of money, and you don't get to take 15 counties and say, too bad for you. And so the Democrats put an amendment on a bill to make them do that, and I voted for it. And all my other colleagues in the Republic, and I knew the amendment would fail because the Democrats didn't have all their people there. It was late at night. But I did that to send a message to Blue Cross and Health Partners. Don't mess with me. I know medicine. And in less than 2 weeks, they were in my office, and they said, hey, we found a way to create a plan for all 87 counties. I said, fine, then we won't have any more problems in the future, will we? But that's the kind of person I am. I don't kiss the ring. And I'm not going to apologize for what I did. But I'll tell you, it wasn't a brilliant move. But when you're Norwegian, you get used to not making brilliant moves.
That's all right over there.
Oh, Dr. Jensen, I want to ask you about the Metropolitan Council.
Met Council?
Yeah, the Met Council. It's hard to distinguish the issues because it feels very confusing to me, but my greatest concern or question about it is the amount of power they seem to have the amount of money they seem to spend, and they seem to be, and they're appointed and not elected, and the scope of power associated with it.
We're talking about the Met Council. Great question, thank you. The Met Council has a budget that's bigger than many states. So this is a fiefdom. The second thing is, there's only like 4 Met Councils structured in this country like ours is. And what I mean by that particularly is they have the ability to tax and the ability to pass laws or regulate. Most planning commissions do one. They will take care of the septic, the water, the infrastructure, they do that. But our Met Council is overendowed with power and authority. So it has become a fiefdom and it operates like a typical government agency. We either have to implode it and get rid of it, or it has to be pared down dramatically. But we need to create a metropolitan planning commission that operates more like metropolitan planning commissions all across America. Our Met Council has been greedy with its power. It has played politics, and it's going to continue to do so until we make dramatic changes. And we can do it, but we have to do it. So remember, it's big, it's been given too much power, and we need to get back to a model that's more typical of all the other metropolitan areas in the country.
Thank you.
All right, over on this side.
Hi, Dr. Jenson. I want to make a comment with some background that leads up to my question.
As long as you keep it brief,
All right.
because sometimes it goes on 5-10 minutes, the backstory, so keep it brief,
Yeah,
okay?
I got you there, and I can talk, but I'll keep it short. I have a family of people in the service. I had 2 brothers that served in Vietnam. My father was a chemist on the Manhattan Project. Through the Army he was brought in, and he died at 54 from lymphoma from exposure. And I have an ancestor who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. So my feeling of dedication to this country and to those who serve this country is really strong. I've never been a political person, but right now I'm feeling it pretty strong. And so to my question is that I just got out of, I had a hip replacement surgery, and then I ended up with blood clots in my lungs. I went to Mercy Hospital and was treated there with heparin, blood thinners, and then because they said they had no room, well, they had to transfer me to Abbott Northwestern in the middle of the night. But I had a nurse say to me, it's not that we don't have the room, we don't have the staff to take care of you. And that alarmed me, it really did. So I ended up at Abbott Northwestern in their coronary ICU, and then was transferred down to a floor where I was treated for my blood clots. And again, there, talking to a lot of the nurses, I kept hearing people saying to them, you know, we need you to work another shift. We need you to work another shift.
Okay, come to your question.
Yes. So my question is, we're short-staffed on nurses in the hospitals. Not only those, but phlebotomists. I mean, I witnessed this. I was there.
So the question basically is what, short-staffed?
Well, what I want to know is how to support those people.
Okay.
How to support people maybe that are being given this mandate that are not comfortable with it, and how we can support those people.
Thank you. So basically what we've got is twofold questions. One is, how do we support the people who, so let's go back to the first. We are short-staffed. And the short staffing is causing, again, some of the fear-mongering. You might see in the papers that it'll say, our ICUs are 95% full.
Yeah.
Well, there's 2 things you need to realize in that. The other day they reported 1,150 patients in the ICUs with 1,200 beds available. So that was 95%. If you go back to the beginning of the pandemic, we were told that we had 3,000 beds available for ICU in the state of Minnesota. How did it shrink to 1,200? I mean, that's the question. And then the other question that has to be asked is, of those 1,150 in the ICU, how many of those are there because they had COVID disease? Not because they came in for a gallbladder removal or a heart attack and got swabbed and had a positive PCR test, but had COVID disease, symptoms, and a positive PCR. In fact, that was 190. So out of 1,200 beds, we had 190 COVID patients occupying those beds, which is about 15%. But if you would use the denominator of 3,000 instead of 1,200, now you have 190 over 3,000, and you are at somewhere around 5%. So that's one of the games. But what your question is getting at is that part of the reason we've gone from 3,000 beds to 1,200 is because we take them out of commission if we don't have the staffing for them. So, and we do have a staffing shortage. And part of that staffing shortage is because we're firing people or letting them go because they won't violate their core convictions. And so what we're doing is we're going to make it worse yet. Rocket science, this is not. That's what's happening. So we have hospitals in Minnesota that can barely get 50% of their staff vaccinated. Now, are we to assume that this 50% that's not getting vaccinated are all stupid derelicts who deserve to be fired? I don't think so. These are the same people that are helping us deliver our babies, take care of us in the ICU when we have a heart attack. These are people we respect and honor, and we're treating them like there's something wrong with their brain, and there's not. They're simply making a decision based on their own convictions. Now, the second part of your question gets to, okay, so these people who are being let go, fired, put on unpaid leave, what can we do to support them? There's nothing you can do other than personally reaching out to them. These people are going to go get jobs, and it's happening. They're getting jobs in other sectors of the market because, frankly, every industry we have out there is looking for employees. And so they're changing careers, and they may not go back. We're seeing that with not just nurses, but we're seeing it with lots of people. We're seeing it with drivers. They're saying, I'm done. We're seeing it with policemen and women. So in terms of what's happening now, there's been no particular support. And that's part of the pressure. They're trying to crank up the pressure. I was notified about 3 or 4 weeks ago from one of the hospital administrators that, and this was an outer ring hospital, that they were getting pressure from the big players in the inner ring, the Fairview University, the Alina, because those systems wanted to make sure that the smaller outer ring suburbs hospitals would do the same thing that they're doing, because they didn't want their employees thinking that they could go ahead and say sayonara and then go get a job in an outer ring hospital. But the fact of the matter is, the outer ring hospitals are definitely staying away from a mandate, and they are going to hire these people. And this is great. But the raw collusion is what should be offensive to us, that they would do this. And it just tells you, I mean, you don't read about it, you don't hear about it on the news, you don't hear about it on Twitter or Facebook. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, hospital administrators are colluding to try to play hardball with the employees. They're forcing to get a shot. And that's just wrong. Go ahead.
If you were the governor today of Minnesota, how would you be handling the mandate from President Biden regarding the mandates for the vaccine in Minnesota? Would you be more like DeSantis, or would you be supporting what he's doing?
Well, I've learned a couple things from that question. What's your first name, sir?
Arlen.
Arlen, you don't do Facebook, do you? I was right, he doesn't. The second thing is, I should have talked to Arlen beforehand and said, would you please ask a question? And I would have asked that exact question, so thank you. About 11:30 at night, last Thursday night, I put a video together with my response to President Biden's words. And we put that up Friday morning, our team did. And it's hit just about 1 million now. And in it, I used a phrase that again has gotten me into some hot water. And the phrase was civil disobedience. So let's talk about civil disobedience. Makes me think of Jesus. Remember when there's that one movie that was The Passion, and I remember that one scene where he just goes like this, and he's just in the sand. It says nary a word. Do you realize that he was being civilly disobedient? The laws allowed for those people to stone that woman to death. And Jesus civilly disobeyed. He was non-compliant. He was non-violent. And when he got done, that crowd dispersed and that woman wasn't stoned. Let's go to a modern day example. 15 months ago, middle of May, locked down for 2 months now. We'd flattened the curve. We'd not overwhelmed our hospital facilities. We did everything that we'd been asked to do. Governor Walz knew that he had to start lightening up on the pressure. So what did he do? He told the bar owners, you can go from 10 to 50. But oh, by the way, churches, no more than 10. The Missouri Synod Lutheran Church and the Catholic Church said, we've had enough. We don't care what you said, Governor Walz. A week from Sunday, we're opening up. That was civil disobedience. Non-compliant, non-violent. They weren't picketing anybody. What did their action prompt? Walz called him up and said, let's talk. Walz backed off, said, you can have up to 50 and we'll treat you like the bars. The court, the churches sued, and Ellison and Walz requested that the district court throw it out. The district court ruled not too long ago, about 2 months ago. No, this case has merit and we'll go forward. And at that point in time, Keith Ellison sat down with the churches and they negotiated an out-of-court settlement that they'll never do this again to the churches.
Good.
That's civil disobedience. That's what we have to do with this. I have said, ignore President Biden's words.
Yeah.
Now,
That's right.
it's not often in a person's lifetime, especially if you're Norwegian, Danish, and Swedish, and I am all three. It's not often that you get to stand and get to 1 million people and say, oh, the President of the United States, you can ignore that.
Yeah.
And so I have taken some heat on that.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, this is going to be adjudicated in the courts.
Yes.
And I am confident that there will be, as long as we don't have these employers, and this is why I was asking the employers, be civilly disobedient. Do not run out and start firing your employees. Do not run out and tell them that they must get a shot or they have to get tested twice a week. Just let those words percolate a little bit that President Biden shared, but don't do it. This is time for
Yeah,
civil disobedience,
that's right.
and we can be orderly about it.
All right, over here.
Yes, Dr. Jenson. The government is sending illegals all over the United States, including Minnesota. They're doing it secretly. Christy Noem from South Dakota told Catholic Charities, you'll not send them here. If you do, we'll pull your funding. So they're, according to her, they're not sending them to South Dakota. They're also sending people, the Afghans, to military bases all over. My son-in-law's in Hawaii. He said there's a military base, they're sending him there. What would you do? What are we going to do about that?
The question is, I don't know if everybody hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that you have to first off identify, what are you trying to do when you do that? You're trying to appropriately house and integrate these folks because they're refugees. Okay, so that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to integrate them in a humane way. Then that begs the second question. Are you prepared to? Can you do that? And then that begs the third question. If you're not, then you shouldn't be doing it. So Minnesota is a cruel climate. And for us to bring people in September, and if we can't appropriately vet them, know that we're getting exactly who we said we're getting, and house them and take care of them, then we should just say no. There's many states that are far less populated than ours that have much friendlier climates. But we're bringing these folks in the middle of September, and we're going to have winter here in 60 days. This makes no sense. Governor Walz wrote a letter to President Biden saying, we're more than happy to help send them here. That shouldn't have happened because we're not equipped to do the job that we have to do to humanely help these folks. So, frankly, we should stop and we should put a program together. If we say, you know what, we think we can help 2,000 people a year, then that's what we do. we'd look at our business owners and we'd look at our medical capabilities. But the last thing we should be doing is allowing hundreds of people across our southern border, many of them shipped up to the Midwest, many of them with active Delta or other variants, and they don't have to respond to the vaccine mandate, but we're firing nurses and teachers. This doesn't make any sense. So we're bringing disease into the state, and they don't have to be vaccinated. But if you work for a hospital and you're not going to get vaccinated, you're going to get fired. This is wrong.
Exactly. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jenson, for being here.
Come right up to the mic if you would,
I
please.
was gonna talk about our 22-year-old nurse daughter who's about to be let go because she refuses to yield her freedom and liberty to this mandate. However, I'm gonna shift gears. I'd like to ask you about your energy policy ideas for Minnesota, specifically in terms of the resource planning that we're currently under. What are your thoughts about that?
That's a complicated question, and I'll try to make short order of it. But so I spent a week going around the northern cities, and we spent a lot of time on the Iron Range. And again, I shoot from the hip, and if you don't like it, you can tell me later, but it's not my problem. So, yes, I understand we want to get off of a dependence on fossil fuels. And we're working toward that. And we have set goals for Xcel. And Xcel and a lot of these other power companies have hit their goals. Then we double down and say, well, then we got to make the goals tighter because they're hitting the goals. And this and that. But let's just bear in mind a few facts. One, we should have learned a real lesson this past winter when in Texas the grid was inadequate. This is not rocket science. People died, people suffered, and it didn't have to happen. Why did it happen? Because there was an artificial narrative going on that said, we can do it on wind and solar, and we can't. So get that through our heads. You can put all these windmills up all over you want, and you can have all the solar streams, but it doesn't work that way. Not to even mention trying to dispose of these items when they're done with their useful life. We are going to have to embrace nuclear power. We have to. Nuclear power, when you measure it across the spectrum, is relatively clean, really quite clean, and from a safety point of view, we are pretty darn good at it. And we will get better at it. And if we can move, and we're moving in this direction, but fusion will be our answer. Right now we are dependent upon fission, and fission does cause more waste products, and there's slightly increased risk. But our engineers and our plants are so safe. I went over into the Prairie Island, and I was amazed at how safe this is. And generally, most people consider nuclear energy as clean energy. Now, I just like to comment on line 3. Line 3 is not mining. Line 3 is trying to replace a line that's being used at 50% capacity. It's more than half a century old, and it's got all the makings of an environmental catastrophe. So if you have any concerns at all about the environment, you should be supporting finish up line 3. And we can talk about mining some other time or another question, but I would just say this. We should have an economy that allows miners to mine, farmers to farm, teachers to teach, and business owners to run their own businesses without being shut down.
Hey, Doctor. We met a few weeks ago, actually, out in Hinckley area when you were out there. And I want to revisit the last election. Okay. We have to find a way to deal with the 2020 election. It can't go by the wayside. We literally have film footage of Ilhan Omar's brother riding around town with ballots on his dashboard. If that isn't hard evidence, I don't know what is, okay? We know that if the election process isn't dealt with, there's going to be issues. We have California as an example. They just, quote unquote, re-elected Gavin Newsom down there. They did nothing with their election process. We've got people going up to the ballots and they're saying that, sorry, you can't vote. Our system says you already voted. So there has to be a different alternative as to how we can get the ball rolling and having this election audited, a full forensic audit. And I'm asking, because if we don't, it'll be a rerun of what just happened in California. And this will just be a dog and pony show to make somebody happy. But it's not gonna make us happy.
And that's why when I talked earlier, you heard me say the comment that I think we shouldn't have given a budget to Wallace because we should have had election security. It was our last chance. So from a legislative perspective, you'll get no help. That's just the facts.
Okay. So
What can we do? We can continue to do what we're doing, pursuing through the courts. And I think we have 2 or 3 lawsuits in process right now. And certainly Senator Mary Kiffmeyer has been a champion on this, and we're doing everything we can through the courts. But there will be no legislative relief for us. And I can't let you step away from the process. I need you energized. I need you to realize that in 2022, that could be our last best chance. So as disappointed and frustrated as you are, I share that with you. We need to get elected, and then we'll put in a forensic audit right away. But we're not going to get that from this governor.
Ma'am, go ahead.
This is not a political question, but in a room full of
5'5", 120 pounds. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought you wanted my wife's dimensions. Got you off guard, didn't I?
you did.
I was watching Benny Hill reruns last night to get ready.
In a room full of Christians, what can we pray for you?
That's a good one.
For this upcoming 24th or 27th.
I don't know why, but some days it's harder to absorb some of the arrows than other days. Yeah. So pray for me that on those days I somehow get a shield, because it's hard on my family too. And my voice.
Thanks for asking that question, because I'm going to decree and declare what will be established for this state and for you. I heard you speak earlier about, we're the easy ones. The conservative Christians, of course, we're going to go after that vote. And my thoughts are, when I look at the state of Minnesota, there's 3 main blue areas. I want to know, what is your strategy for laying out your net in that area? Whether it's a Gen XYZ or whatever.
No, basically what you're asking for is, what's your pathway to winning? We're in a blue state, and we know that between Rochester, Duluth, and Minneapolis and St. Paul, it's a pretty daunting task. I already talked about, we need to do a better job of engaging and respecting the women so that they will be powerfully motivated, and I think we can do it. I don't think we've done well enough. I think we have to go after the minorities and let them know that they belong with us. We need to go to the Gen Zs and the millennials and say, you need to be a part of the solution, we need you. And then we need to go take the DFL, and we need to excise the farmers from them, because they haven't done anything for the farmers. And the farmers are with us, they're moving our way. And we have to go after labor, and we don't talk about the things that divide us. We talk about a robust economy, get this economy sizzling, and let's get good paying jobs. And it doesn't matter if you're a union member or not, that's exactly what you want. But then I'll turn my attention to Minneapolis, St. Paul. We will not win, and we don't have to. All we need to do is, if we can get those 5 groups I just mentioned, all we need to do is lose by less. And that might sound like a clever little answer, but there's a woman named Stacey Davis who's going to be running against Elon Omar. I met with Stacey Davis. She said, I want your help, Scott. How can I do what you've done? I've connected with some of the people that we've used on our team. But CeCe Davis is a tall, articulate, good-looking, smart black woman, and she is a pit bull. And she's going to take Ilhan Omar's margin of victory down. So instead of 75-25, maybe be 65-35. Ilhan Omar is probably going to win. But if anybody's going to beat her, it'll be CeCe Davis. But even if CeCe Davis doesn't beat her, she's going to make a big dent. And that dent will spill over all the way down the ticket or up the ticket. So CeCe Davis is going to help us, and we're going to help her.
We had CeCe here a couple, 3 months ago. Yeah, she's a little spitfire, isn't she?
She is, yeah. But she's not Norwegian.
Yes, I have 3 predecessors that were signed on the Declaration of Independence. I have 3 uncles who fought and were on the beachhead landing in Normandy, where they were told 50% of them would probably be dead when they landed. And their name happens to be Lee. I'm a Lee descendant from my mother's side. And the question is, what can we do about tearing down national monuments? That's not right. I don't care whether they like Robert or Lee or not. It was a national monument, and so was the one in the Capitol building they tore down. And they did nothing. They watched them do it.
Your question is bigger than that, and your question is an important one. Your question is about rewriting history. The fact of the matter is, General Lee was an honorable soldier. He served the United States of America. And when we had a civil war, he sided with his family and his neighbors. And nobody can really criticize him for that. So I agree with you completely. We are going hog wild crazy over rewriting history. We're renaming buildings, renaming lakes, we're taking down statues. It makes no sense at all. It's like, well, I hate to say, I'm not supposed to say something like this, but it's like the monkeys running the zoo. We just gotta stop it. I'm sure that probably shouldn't be. I think that was a private thought.
Mark the time there, Kevin, so we can edit it. Go ahead, Mark.
I'm very concerned about the narrative that the unvaccinated are causing deaths. It's because of the unvaccinated. And I can't understand why the medical community isn't explaining that this isn't really a vaccine. I'm just baffled how that's come to be such a common belief.
I'm baffled too, I am. I'm confounded by the whole thing. The medical profession has failed you. It's failed all of you. We have not stood as one voice to make certain that patients are at the top of the heap. I mean, if you want to have a conversation about what role hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin could be for you, or that you don't want a vaccine, none of those things should be off limits. They should be respectfully discussed. I don't know where medicine went so wrong, but somehow it's as if doctors think that they've got a monopoly on appropriate core convictions, and they don't. I mean, in a lot of ways, doctors have been spoiled. They walk into a community rolls out the red carpet for them. They make buku dollars. They frequently never had to earn the respect, they were granted it. That doesn't happen to everybody that moves into a community. And we have absolutely dissed our patients. I was asked a couple days ago in southern Minnesota by a nurse, and this is the only time I've ever been asked this by a nurse,